Welcome. This is the Great Marketing Turnaround. And I'm going to bring up a slide here as we're waiting for people to join us. The session's intended to be a hands-on session, so we are hoping you can really devote this time fully to your business marketing. I've got a link, and actually we can put that link in the chat too. If you haven't already visited our Great Marketing Turnaround page and downloaded the marketing message activity sheet or opened it up from the email that you received from the center, this is a good time while we're kind of letting everybody into the session. So make sure that you go ahead and find that download activity sheet. It's a Word document, so you can complete it on your computer. Some people just like to print it out. That's might be easier for you to work on during the webinar. Also, I will say you can also just use a piece of paper and write on your paper some of the information. It's just easier to have the handout. As we go through this, another participation is we have chat and polls, comments related to the activities that will help you get the most out of our time together. So it'll help you not only apply the points that we're doing, but it also, your thoughts kind of help other people who are joining us in this session. If you do have a question though, please make sure you put it in the Q&A tab at the bottom. We'll repeat that. That way it won't get lost and we will get around to those. So as we're starting off here, and again, letting people kind of join us as they will, I do have a question. I want to hear a little bit about your business because this is a webinar. We don't have the benefit of personal introductions, but as a topical way of getting to know all of you, I invite you to share your number one marketing goal that you have for your business. So if you could put in the chat the number one marketing goal that you have for your business. If you're joining us, make sure you've downloaded the links in the chat, and then we're just starting out with sharing a little bit of information, getting to know each other. What is a marketing goal that you have for your business right now? So a lot of the goals right now are about increasing business, new markets, or acquiring new clients. Some goals related to online. Awareness for actual conditions, okay, CIRS. And welcome Susie from all the way from Tucson. Hey, that's where I'm from, so hi Susie. So we're putting our marketing goals into the chat. I'm going to let you continue to do that. I'm assuming, Donna, we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and just start the conversation. Before we get into the real content, though, I want to give you a brief overview of some of the services and resources at the Maricopa Small Business Development Center. Many of you may know this, so it's a little maybe a repeat, but some of you may be new to the SBDC. So Maricopa SBDC is part of a national and state network of small business development centers. And our main offering is this no-fee counseling. We have in Maricopa around 17 counselors throughout the entire county, so makes it easy to access, even though we're all working virtually at this time. At the end of today's session, if you're interested in counseling, I'll give you a little bit more information on how to access that. We also offer a bunch of other programs, such as our webinars today, and some other resources and tools that I'll tell you about. And these are all low fee or no fee programs because we're funded on the federal level by the Small Business Administration, and then here locally by Maricopa County Community Colleges. And we also partner with the Arizona Commerce Authority. So real briefly, some of our technical assistance areas are featured on this slide. We do offer a wide variety of, like I said, no fee counseling in these areas. During this last year, we've done a major portion of our counseling is really about assisting our clients as they navigate the COVID relief funding programs. But we also help our clients access traditional lending. We give financial reviews, we do marketing assessments. We have counselors who, as I mentioned, are specialists in the area of manufacturing or technology or export, and we work close with PTAC, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers for those who are looking for government contracting. The SBDC has several resources that we offer our clients, including some of these that you see here. The growth wheel I've talked about in our past session. We use one of the activities from that. It has a lot of tools for marketing decision making to help you through the strategy process. We also provide access to a business planning platform called Life Plan, and it's a great tool, maybe even to take some of our great marketing turnaround series content and turn it into a full working marketing plan. We also do offer some tools for benchmarking, such as Profit Sense, and for market research, including IBIS World and the SBDC Net. So you would access these tools through your SBDC counselor. So it's another reason to get on board with the SBDC counseling process. I have over 35 years experience in marketing turnarounds for small businesses in a wide variety of industries and markets, including digital and PR and mass media and graphics and event marketing. But I consider my expertise that of approaching each of these individual tactics with an overall strategy. So my eye is for strategy. Also, I have experience being a past entrepreneur. I do know what it takes to create profitable customer acquisition and the need that you have to do it fast and cost effectively. So I hope some of these tools that I present today will help you streamline your marketing efforts. So I also want to introduce Esme and Donna from the SBDC operations team. They're going to kind of be in the dark side here. They are co-facilitating the webinar behind the scenes and may speak up from here and then. They're handling your interactions. Esme is new to our team, but she does and will be doing many of our own hands-on marketing efforts for the SBDC. So we're a few minutes in here, but I still want to repeat, if you haven't already answered in chat, what is your #1 marketing goal for your business? So I have seen a few more additions here. Some of these include just being at a startup stage, which is a great time to develop your marketing plan. Long-term clients, goals to have branding, and then an actual strategy. So that's great. A lot of things center around new client or customer acquisition. So those are some really good goals. And we're going to talk about how important it is to be really structured with those goal setting as you're building your marketing strategy. So let's start off today. I want to start off the topic of messaging in a little bit of a philosophical or scientific way. So I did some research in what influences people's purchase behavior, their purchase decisions and their behavior. And I want to know kind of what your thoughts are or what your guess is. So I'm going to have Esme put up the poll. I want you to give me, and it could just be your best guess on what you think influences people's purchase behavior. So what did the research say about the key to influencing others' behavior? So there's consistency, consensus, liking, authority, reciprocity, scarcity. What do you think? Don't overthink it either. Give me a good guess.
We have about 71% of the people voted already. I'll leave it up for a few seconds. There's 10 that have voted already.
Okay. So based on the information you have, Esme, let's share what people think the key to influencing others is. Consistency. Okay, I like this group's thinking. I really do. I do like this group's thinking, but it actually is a trick question. So most of you said consistency, and a few of you said some of these other options. The truth is that all 6 of these are valid. This comes from research from a psychologist, Robert Cialdini, and he wrote a book on persuasion, and he's also a professor at ASU, so he's well known locally. He listed 6 principles of persuasion that he had done research for, and they have been used for marketers for a long time in crafting messages that make things happen, which I know is what you want to do. So consistency that most of you chose, or a lot of you chose, that mirrors my favorite marketing tenet of repetition, repetition, repetition. I'm going to be repeating that if you don't get that already. We'll cover it more when we look at the buying process, and I'll constantly remind you of the value of consistency. The consensus part is really kind of what we call social proof, and that's people follow the actions of others. In a negative way, I've heard herd mentality, but really it is a part of our influence that we follow social. Liking is not what you would think in terms of Facebook liking. It has to do with similarities or likeness. So when things complement or people are cooperating or have mutual goals, that's the aspect of influence of liking. Authority is about credibility, and we'll talk about that in today's session and also in next session as well, for session 3. Some of these scientific things are really interesting. They did an experiment in terms of authority, and they found that the lead conversion from an initial phone inquiry, like if somebody's calling you up to see about your business, to ask questions, they found that lead conversion of those calls into an actual client increased significantly when the person answering the phone, the receptionist or whoever answered it, mentioned all of the colleagues' credentials and their expertise before actually transferring them to the person that they're going to talk to. So they might say something like, Sandra has 12 years experience in corporate law and has written blah, blah, blah. And that kind of information alone added to authority and credibility. So those are some of the tactical reasons to be knowledgeable about these principles of persuasion. The reciprocity is sort of like creating an obligation in a way. Little things can be done. And here's one I think you'll be familiar with. They did an experiment in restaurants on showing how tips increased when a little mint or a cookie was given with the check. So I'm sure you've seen that happen before. Well, interestingly, if the gift, meaning the cookie or mint, was doubled and say 2 mints were given, the tips didn't double. They quadrupled. So they were over what they normally were significantly. But probably the most interesting to me is that if the waiter or waitress or wait staff had given them 1 mint and then walks away from the table and then says, oh, you nice people, I'll give you another one, they experienced a 23% increase in their tip. So I think what this shows in terms of the reciprocity is that it's not just about what's given, it's also about how it's given. And one of the things that we can do in marketing to leverage this principle, it has to do with referral programs. And that kind of actually leverages several of these in terms of social proof. So we'll talk about those type of ways to gain more new customers through your existing happy customers. The last one, scarcity. This is a little bit of fear-based marketing, but it's true. People want what they think they can't have or what they stand to lose. So it's not just about what they want to gain. Sometimes it's about, what it is that they think they might not have. And I think the best example of that might be our toilet paper run from last year. So these psychological principles will be helpful because we're going to talk about some things sort of under this topic. And I'll send you a link about this research in my follow-up email after the webinar. But I wanted to frame our conversations about messaging with this information so that you realize that your messaging has to do a lot more than just relay product features or talking about your company. So it needs to be more about these principles than just talking about yourself or your business. So your marketing message, and even more important, how you incentivize the desired actions from your messaging, it starts with really understanding and getting into the minds of your customers. You then speak with them in that persuasive way to get whatever your marketing goals are or desired actions. So did you get that? You want to be really clear about these goals and your customer's perception so that you can translate that into that persuasive messaging. That's really kind of a really important aspect. So knowing your customer and knowing what you want them to do. Our topics for today are going to stress these areas. we're going to carry over from session 1, the idea about knowing your customer and translating your offering to a specific marketing goal. So we're going to keep touching on that. We'll also be looking at some techniques and communication best practices so that you can focus in on really kind of developing that written business marketing plan. These time-proven strategies are helpful and upgraded as you document your path. And so we'll even give you some tools to do that so that you can upgrade or turn around, or as some of you are, just start your marketing process. So we'll build on last session. If you didn't attend, that's fine. We'll catch you up a little bit here, and you can also go back and listen to the video. But we're going to use something called our positioning and our unique selling proposition from last session to create some fabulous, and you'll understand why they're fabulous, tools to translate these into features and benefits. And then we'll help you figure out these right messages at the right time to get your customer communications, matching your goals, introducing something powerful called sales promotion. And in the end, I'm going to actually introduce some content planning tools so that you can influence members of your target market and really start to build the synergy of a true marketing mix. So I told you I need to start with a little bit of a recap, and that was that last time I said that I feel that marketing is part science and part art. And so the formula, the science part, is about creating that right message about your right product. So knowing your audience, you've got to get the right product or service to that right audience and basically at that right time. That's really the difficult part, and that's where some of the science that I've already talked about comes in, but a little bit of art and technique. For last session, we did discuss or go into some great depth about our target market. This was really important, knowing our customers, and we described it in 4 ways. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I want to point these out so that you can go back and get more information on this if you didn't meet with us last time. This is the work that all marketers have to do in order to create a good customer-centric marketing plan. It's important because you can't get the message right. Or even if you get the message right, if you can't deliver it to the right audience, then it's going to flop. So if you missed last session, don't worry, just look up these particular components, and this is how you want to go about describing your target market. You're going to describe it from a demographic standpoint, a location or geographic standpoint, a psychographic standpoint, and buyer behavior. And this little graphic comes from one of the growth wheel tools that I mentioned earlier. So if you're working with an SBDC counselor, you can always tell them that you would like to do these exercises in growth wheel. But today we're going to use our target market and positioning work to get that right message about the right product to the right audience at the right time. And we're going to do that by first starting with our unique differentiation. So last time we talked about positioning, that's comparing ourselves from the customer's perspective with the competition. So we've got to understand 2 things there. We've got to really understand our customer's perception, and we also have to be able to differentiate from other options, and we have to know what those other options and choices that our customer has. So again, it's not something that we're going to dig into how you do that right now, but we're going to kind of talk about the result, because last session I asked the attendees to turn their positioning into a 1-sentence unique selling principle. So if any of you did work on this, you can go ahead and share your unique selling principle. Don't be shy. Go ahead and post it into the chat, because I know I signed that as homework. And if some of you are following along, I want you to know that there's an appreciation for you getting some of this work done. It's going to really help you as we go forward. So, but I'm going to talk about the USP a little bit for those of you who didn't attend last time, so that you can catch up and work on this outside of today's session. So a USP is basically a differentiation about you and your company. I mean, your company, your business, your products, a differentiation from others in your industry. And it implies some promise of a desired outcome for your target market. But the key thing is that, again, it's not really centered about you, it's centered on your target market. So this kind of a template might help people write it. You don't have to use this. This isn't, golden, but it might help you create that message. And this is really the beginning of putting together synergistic content and a plan. So we're going to be using this today to build on it through some of that FAB analysis that I talked about. So let's say, I'm going to give you an example of this. So the formula is blank is a type of business that does what, for who, and what's the benefit. So it's also been known as a value proposition. It's been known as other different things. It doesn't matter what you call it. Basically, this is the basis of putting your differentiation out there first and foremost and making it concise. COVID is yeah.
Sorry about that. We've received one.
Okay.
Raven by Design is an interior design firm that offers cohesive, functional design for homeowners and investors looking to increase their market value.
Awesome. So this has, I like the promise. I'm going to hone in on the end, looking to increase their market value. So that's that differentiation and promise. So I'm going to talk a little bit. We're going to keep that one up. But thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Anyone else who has one to share, that'd be great too. I'm going to give you some of my own examples, and we'll have Amy's examples to kind of look at how we can improve or make that more powerful. My example is going to be different than interior design, but it's also a service industry. So I think both Amy's example and mine are going to be helpful for you guys to look at, and any others that you want to share. So imagine that I own a commercial cleaning company, or you own a commercial cleaning example, and you have some attributes like professional service and safe products, but there's a lot of cleaning companies out there right now because COVID's created a real need for clean environments. So there's more competition. I mean, there's more customers, but there's more competition. And the internet has really changed things, and choices everywhere. And you have to really start to understand what your customers want. You have to put your differentiation, wear your differentiation on your sleeve. So let's say my company, which is a high-tech cleaning company, is a full-serve custodial business, and they use scientifically proven leading-edge methods. So they are delivering the most effective sterilizing techniques to businesses that need extra protection, such as healthcare, schools, and mass venues. So that's high-tech cleaning company, full service, scientifically proven methods, most effective sterilizing techniques to businesses that need extra protection, health, schools, mass venues. So this is something you would take some time with. This isn't something that just, it's similar to an elevator speech, but it's a little bit different. And I'll tell you why. A USP, you can tell it's a good USP if it can become the yardstick to measure all of your granular messaging campaigns. So no matter how specific your marketing gets, it needs to fall under this. It's a litmus test in a way for anything that you do. So it's kind of like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You really need to tighten it up, and you really need to play with it and work with it to get it down. However, it's not a mission statement. This is something that people confuse it with a mission statement. Mission statements are broader, and they're usually why your business exists. They're usually involving, promises that you're making to yourself about profitability, or to your staff, or to the community. They're not necessarily, they may include customers, but they're not just based on customers. And a USP is a value proposition specifically to the customer, specifically to a target market segment. So it's not even a slogan, even though it could help you build a slogan and it informs your marketing and your slogans. It's more behind the scenes. It's what you use to make sure that all of your marketing is standing up to your main message. It keeps you on track. I see another one. Azteca Business Solutions is a full service business advisory team that provides to our community and neighbors a pathway to reach financial success. So what I'm going to do now is that, so for those of you who have a USP, try this little test. Leave off the name of your business and share it with somebody, your spouse, your friends, your customer, a favorite customer, somebody. See if they can fill in the blank. What you want to make sure is if you left your name out of it, could it be confused with another business? If you think it's possible, then be honest with yourself and go back and tweak it more. You really need it to be different. We really need it to be unique. And if you could substitute another company's name and have it be just as true for that other company, then it's probably not going to serve you in its purpose as being the major impetus or the litmus test for your marketing. So while these are great, I don't know enough about your industry to be able to answer this question. I think you're going to have to go back at it and see for yourself. could another business say the same thing? And that's what I want you to do, to make that really sort of objective look at it. And then once you do have an USP that really speaks to your brand and your organization and your target market, then you can begin to start to do your customizing of your messaging and even do it on a more segmented basis for your different homogeneous market segments. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to really do today. We needed to start with the need for talking about the USP, but we're going to kind of move on from that. And that's something that you can play with and get that perfected, because it doesn't happen all at once. So when you do the exercises that we're going to do today, eventually you're going to compare that and say, does this really match my positioning or my USP? Is it going to be something that goes back to that core message? But what we're going to start with today, as far as a new exercise, is the FAB analysis. And the FAB analysis is something that helps you examine some key features of your products and services to find out the specific advantages and ultimately align them with the customer's criteria. So FAB is an acronym, feature, advantage, business. So it sorts out some of the main values. And so it might be very easy for you to do this. The main values of your products and services, and it makes sure it's aligned. Remember that they're all together meeting that customer's needs that's been defined by your USP. It also helps us kind of sort out, like if we have a lot of different features out there and we're probably maybe giving too much information in our messaging, it helps us sort out which features. Remember, I talked about the right features. So it gives us some real clarity as to matching up those right features based on what the customer wants, what the consumer benefit is. In the same way, it also will expose anything that was maybe not a good fit. So maybe there's some features that really is not spelled out in terms of a clear benefit, and you don't have to dilute your messaging with those. It's also another exercise to really keep you thinking like the customer. And this is one of the hardest things for us to do, is to remember that, you know, we are the proud parent of our business, and we're going to think of our business in all the best terms, but we really want to remember to have that honest, prospective customer's eye. So let's take a look. We'll start with the feature. So the features are the specs. These are important, but they're kind of sometimes boring. But we have to start here, especially because we really want to define all the features. And there are features that could be hidden from the user because they're not seen, maybe their materials or how it's constructed, or some kind of the training behind the service, some unobvious aspect of your offering that's just not necessarily clear. So they could be a feature that you have to bring out there. But features are not really a story yet. They're not, when we talk about messaging, we talk a lot about the story. They're not the story, they're just features. So they're physical characteristics. So they describe what aspects your product or service contains. They're often tied into the senses, something they can see, smell, touch, something's measurable. They could be attributes, you know, color, speed, price. So they're very, very obvious things. So in this segment of feature, I like to give an example. This one's, I hope is something that everyone can kind of relate to. I like to give a product sample, but this works with services as well. So let's say your business is a bakery that caters to people with food sensitivities. So one feature, is that your vegan mock chocolate chip cookies, so mock meaning different, vegan mock chocolate chip cookies. Hard to say, it's like a tongue twister. So let's just say your chocolate chip cookies have a specific texture. They're soft in the middle and crisp on the outside, just like a chocolate chip cookie should be, right? You could have a completely different feature that has your cookies are made without 8 specific allergens. So these are features. These are what? It's something you smell, see, measure, taste, touch. The second part of this is to translate that into an advantage of what the features do or what they're for. So these are the bridge to the actual benefits. The thing that the customer really cares about is how it benefits it. But you kind of do this little bridge to get there. This is where you learn which features are important, because if a feature doesn't have an advantage, it still might be a feature, but it might not be important in marketing anyway. So these are what the features do. They don't yet get to benefit. They're just, what that feature delivers, why that feature is there, what it actually does. So you try and name an advantage for every feature, but don't get disappointed if you can't come up with an advantage. It's one of those diagnostics where maybe then it's not as important. I really feel that this is an area that we use that USP, because the most important advantages are really going to be connected back to that unique selling proposition. So I gave you the example of the bakery's mock chocolate chip cookies, soft in the middle, crisp on the outside, or made without 8 allergens. So some advantages are that texture mimics traditional cookies. That's the advantage. Or the other one, without the allergens. Unlike regular baked goods, people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity can eat them without getting sick. So we're translating feature, strictly feature, to an advantage. And then the last part, if features are the what and advantages are what for or why, benefits are the so what. So what? How will that product or service impact the customer, enhance the customer, solve the customer's problem? That's the part that matters. And that's where we're starting to see how the beginning features translate. And this is where stories and the messaging get born. They get born in the why, or the how. How is it so important? So that's where you can start to really see your messaging take shape and your stories take shape. We'll go through some other examples in a minute, but one of the ways that you can, a hint that you can take here is to, if you have customers, satisfied customers already, and you've been encouraging them to give you feedback or post customer testimonials, look for the so what in the customer testimonials. Look for the pros and cons from your customer's mouth or in the minds of the customer to help you with that so what. And we'll go through some more examples, but I want us to make sure we see that this is a pretty important step. The seemingly simple analysis is valuable. And I know it has been for a lot of the people, the businesses I worked in COVID, because they're restructuring and reinventing their product and service from the feature on up. And so this has been a helpful process for them. So one of the last parts, the so what, maybe the so what for the bakery is that so they don't have to buy 2 kinds. Let's say they're a person with an allergy, or maybe a person who has friends with allergies. The so what is, I don't have to buy 2 kinds and they're still going to taste good, or no one will tell the difference, but I know everybody's safe. The so what is what problem is solved out of it. We'll go through some more examples in a minute. One of my classic stories of product repositioning that comes out of sort of this kind of analysis was from a century ago, and that's with Arm & Hammer, which is the baking soda company. So they turned, this is over 100 years ago, they turned a feature, which was odor absorption, into an entirely new product line expansion, because their product, which was originally sold just for cooking, and then they identified a feature of the odor absorption that could be translated into a so what, and it began being used for other things, and we found it in the refrigerator, and then they created whole new product lines and laundry detergent, etc. So this process gets used at all levels. So in conclusion, we're going to use this FAB worksheet as an exercise. We're going to solve for the customer's problem, and we're going to keep in mind that you're in a market that's changing, and technology and all those things. So it's part of, even if you have been in business a while, this is part of what you would do to keep staying relevant. I will also suggest that as you go through this process, and I'll hit this again, you're going to fine tune this eventually, and you will want to have proof points, meaning my cleaning company that says they have the most effective surface sterilizing techniques, you can't use words like most effective unless you have something to back that up. Maybe they have a white paper that shows some studies that evidence that their system is at X rating. You need to make sure you're not using superlatives lightly, and you need to make sure that you have some proof points to back up some of those claims. So Let's take a look at this for your business. This is where that downloadable comes in. This is the activity sheet, or a picture of the activity sheet that we're going to use today. It's going to help you go through these steps, and I'll walk you through that, and I'll give you some examples. So we're going to use this sheet as a message planner. If you haven't already, the downloadable link is in the chat. Thank you, Esme. You can print it, you can work on it online, or you can just grab a sheet of paper, because we're going to go ahead and start this activity. We won't have time actually to start the entire process, or to do a complete process, but I'm going to give you a taste for it and a flavor for it, and I want you to actually work on your business so that you can understand the process. So I'm going to go ahead and open this same sheet in my Word document. And we'll go through these steps. So the first thing is that you would be completing this part up here. And let me just cut and paste. I'm going to do a little bit of cut and pasting magic here. You're going to complete that. So if you haven't done that, don't worry to try and rush it. Just remember to go back, because it's going to be helpful in your overall message planning. So you're going to put that that fine-tune unique selling principle out there. And we'll also want to identify a target market, because if last week we talked about the fact that you may have multiple target market segments, and your messaging, even underneath that umbrella unique selling proposition, your messaging may change. The benefit translations may change based on those different segments. They may not, but they may change, and you really want to understand the differences. So we actually did we created last week a persona that represented a market segment for us. And if you can even put in what that persona would be if you had a persona created. For my cleaning company, I'm just going to use a segment that is a good focus called physician offices. So that's later we might do schools, and it might have a different whole messaging. Banks might be another one, other important segments. So we're going to work with physician offices. And we're going to start with an example of a feature. So what I feel, as I'm pretending I am high-tech cleaning company, I feel that one of my biggest differentiations, or the specific feature that I tend to promote a lot, is my guarantee. And basically what my guarantee says, the advantage of this guarantee, is that if it's not done correctly, it'll be done and it'll be redone. Okay, no cost. So what we would want to do is figure out, well, what does that mean? What particular benefit solution? Well, for the customer, that means that they don't have to worry about not having a sterile waiting room, because they know that even if I didn't get it right, I will get it right. So let's go back to my unique selling proposition. I have the most effective sterilizing techniques. So what is the feature that allows me to do that? Well, I have this scientific leading edge thing called electrostatic disinfection. And what that does is it basically not only cleans the dirt, but it kills these germs and contaminants. Pretty impressive right now. And what I have as a benefit that all of those offices really like is that it has a kill claim for COVID, and that's an actual term. So I've got proof. I've got proof that there's a high kill claim. It's one of the highest number of germs percentages compared to other techniques. So that's another good benefit. The other thing, though, is that what's really neat about this particular electrostatic method is that it's actually delivered through misting and vapor. And so there's actually a couple advantages for that. So this is an area where you guys might want to say, you know what, there's more than one advantage for this particular point, because not only is this an advantage because it goes everywhere. It can go underneath tables, it can go around corners, it can get everywhere. But the other advantage is that it's very highly efficient. So at first you would think, well, highly efficient might be a great advantage for me as the deliverer of the service, because I can work fast and make more money and serve more customers. But does it translate into a benefit? Let's see. I broke this one benefit here of the electrostatic method into two advantage, or one feature into two advantages here. I won't change the spreadsheet, but it's really the same, oops. It's really the same feature. It's delivering two advantages that I want to break down into two benefits. So the goes everywhere is really important because it, I guess the bottom line is that for the customer, it gets really hard to reach points because they're really worried about those things like the door handle and all these areas that people might be touching, and underneath the tables where nobody ever used to clean before. But why it's important, not just to me that it's efficient, and it's important to my customer, and you guys look for these things, look for why it is. Well, it dries so fast. And so that means that if I had to go back and redo it because of that guarantee, and they called me and I get in there, 10 minutes before they open their office, it's done because it's fast. So there are some benefits. So these, typically I would go on in this fashion and add as many features, translate them into advantages and benefits. My little spreadsheet here has only 5 rows, but don't let that stop you. Don't let the limitations. Go ahead and add more rows, or if you printed it out, turn it over. You may have to go through a dozen before you're able to prioritize and sort these. So I'm going to stop with some examples and give you a little bit of time to try this for your product or service. I'm going to go back to my slides and kind of go over the instructions and then give you some time. This is a little workshop, so I'll give it some time to do it. So what I'm going to ask you to do are these steps for now, and I'll go through them and then I'll give you the time. So you're going to complete the USP if you have it. That's just going to be helpful to go back to. Oh, and one thing I didn't show you is that, I may want to update my unique selling proposition as the outcome of this. So one thing I realized is that, as I said, it's definitely for this audience, but I don't have anything in here that offers the benefit of the guarantee. So I may offer something and expand my USP with a satisfaction guarantee. And that may not be the perfect wording, but we may go back and alter our unique selling principle as a result of this exercise, or perfect it. So you're going to decide what target market you will focus on, and then go into that feature analysis and see if you can come up for each feature, trying to do at least 3 features if you can, more if you get on a roll. Come up with an advantage for each one, and that's column 2, and then translate it into a benefit for the target market segment. So one thing I've noticed is if you have a little bit of different target market segments, let's say my physician and my bank, I may have the same features of what I'm delivering service-wise, but the advantages or maybe just the benefits might change based on the target market. So it's really important to define the target market. All right, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to dim my video. I'm going to give you, it's 10:42. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So we're going to go to 10:47 to work on this section. So we're going to go 10:47. I'll pop in and remind you when we have a minute left. So I'm going to go dark. And are there any questions before we go ahead and move into the activity? Okay. All right, let's do it. Everybody's got their worksheet in front of you. The instructions are up here, and we'll go. I'm going to give you about 1 more minute. So if anybody has any questions on the activity, go ahead and just take another minute. Okay. I know you guys are hard at work thinking about your advantages and features and benefits, but I'm going to move on to some of the remaining steps. Don't worry if you didn't finish all of your fab points. You can go back to them later, and I'll give you some more time even as we complete the rest of this sheet. But we need to kind of go on so that we can cover all of the different aspects of the sheet. So what I want to look at next is how you translate these into some of your messaging. And the cool thing about doing this exercise is that it starts to create some messaging for you. And my sheet's going to scroll down, so I'm going to actually just move it to the next page. It's going to create the messaging for you. It should practically write itself. It's about cleaning up some of those benefits and keeping it simple. So you're going to clean up those benefits and use a lot of customer focused words such as you or your, and you're going to try and use an active voice. An active voice means instead of saying happiness comes from chocolate, which is not very active, you're going to say eating Hershey Kisses make you happy. So those are some of the ways that you can kind of clean up your benefit translation. Always go back to that USP and make sure that it agrees or it overlaps, that it concurs with that. It's a good time to see, this is how you make sure you're not sending mixed messages or overwhelming your customer with what's important. So this is the honing. This is making everything relevant and relatable. And then ultimately the wordsmithing is what's going to make it compelling. So we're going to boil it down to our key messages with some steps. And this is sort of like just a note-taking tool. So don't get too bogged down by using the right words. I'm just giving you some hints to get you closer to those words. Ultimately, you want to come up with a few sentences here that are going to distill the things that you did on the first page or on the top of page 1. So we're not doing a slogan. It could be built or turned into a slogan, but we're just trying to figure out, well, what are the main parts that I'm going to translate into benefits? So we started with High Tech Cleaning Company. We'll stick with High Tech Cleaning Company. They had a lot of features. Boy, when I got done with them, let's say they had, 15 different features. But I went through with them and we were able to figure out which ones matter the most to their target market. And you can write your key message. You can put that into a nice full sentence, but I kind of like talking points or bullet points. So for High Tech Company, I'm going to put in here some of the things we already talked about. So this really is their USP. Okay. So we start out because in our messaging, we're going to need to tell them who we are. That's part of it. But then I'm really honing in on, what, these are the things that matter to that medical people. They really want to know that this can be repeated instantly, that I can have them come twice a day if I needed to. They want to know that we have an expertise. They want to know that, and I didn't finish this out, but the satisfaction guarantee means that they're never worried about whether or not their waiting rooms are safe. They're going to be able to cover that. Maybe additional features had to do with how it's scheduled and all of those kind of things. But you're seeing how these messages arrive from the benefits and the unique selling point, and you're distilling them into as tight of an explanation as you can, so that when you go and actually write your content for any particular communication. Well, another way that this is going to serve you is that in order to not overwhelm people with too much information, you may have a post or a blog that's only on topic 1, another post or a blog that's on topic 3. So it gets you an idea of how you're going to cover all of this, because it's probably not possible. And I'll say later that you shouldn't probably try and cover everything in every communication. So this is trying to get out there, what are some of the messages that you want to do, and you want to be able to set yourself up for repetition so that you're going to do them in several different ways, several different times. The other thing that this section talks about is the buying process. What do I mean by buying process? This is really knowing how your target market prefers to purchase your product and service. So it's getting familiar with your own processes, your own customer preferences. And that's what I talked about, listening to the pros and cons of those that you already work with. Or if you're new to the industry or just starting up, do some research about preferences. So let's say for high-tech cleaning company, and to make this quick and easy in my example, I'm just going to cut and paste again. Hopefully I can get them all in here. Let's say that our customers always get a quote because they're shopping, and that's how the decision maker gets sold on how to purchase or gets approval. Let's say they almost always need a site visit. And let's say that I offer an ability to do that virtually. Once the quote is approved, the customer wants convenience. So that's telling me a little bit about the customer and their process, their preferences. Some logistics, I need facility access, I need payment terms, and all of these kinds of things go into the preferences. It's not something that you're going to necessarily put in every communication or ad, but it could become part of your messaging as we build out particular communications. So let's go back to your turn. You're going to do this next session, the section that says key message and buying process. The key message, you're going to come up with a few sentences with the main benefits of what you want to retain. So again, if you didn't finish all the features analysis into benefits, you might have to work on this later, but give it a start right now. See if you can come up with, I won't give you as long on this time, probably about 3 minutes. See if you can come up with some main messaging, and then check in on whether it agrees with your USP, if it's compelling, and if you can actually really support it. So that's one of the things, is to make sure you can support it. And then do the buying process. Just think about how your target market prefers to purchase this. And remember, don't worry about, if you can't fit it, you can always create another sheet to it. So again, I'm going to just give you a couple minutes. Don't try to nail the words perfectly right now. You're going to wordsmith later when you build your ad or your social media, but get the message down concisely and try and simplify it. And I'll be quiet for another couple of minutes while you work on that one. So with these instructions, I'm going to pop back over to my examples because I think that might be more helpful. Thank you for mentioning that, Stacy. Not to rush you, but I'm going to give you another minute to finish coming up with some of your messaging and documenting some of the buying process or preferences you think are important. Okay, dokie. So we need to move on, but let's just go ahead and check back and see how that went. So Esme has a little question for you. See if I can pull you back into our program here. I want to find out how this exercise went for you. Okay, so this is an easy rating for me. I mean, you choose, okay, it was easy. I really already knew what my features were. I've already translated them. This was easy. Or maybe it was eye-opening. Maybe it gave you some new ideas about the features that might be the most marketable for you. But for some people, this is sort of challenging. You have to really work at breaking it down because you're so into the whole thing, the whole experience of what you deliver, that you've never really separated into the individual components. So give me some feedback that will help me as I'm moving forward. Tell me whether this exercise was easy, eye-opening, difficult, or if you have some other ideas, go ahead and put that in chat as well.
I'll give you a few more seconds so I could end the poll. All right, I'm going to end the poll and launch the results.
Well, good. So a lot of you found that this was easy and you have a lot of familiarity. Some found, at least over half of you found that it gave you some new ideas. This is really the purpose. And as you go through this process with different target markets, this is how you gain the improvements in your marketing messaging and the honing it down. Sometimes it can be difficult, but there's a payoff to the difficult. Some also said difficult, Garth, realizing how much work you need to do on your marketing, how little you know about it. So there's good news and bad news in that statement. So, you know, it's just like anything, like I think of, you know, sports and stuff. It's like, oh, wow, every little thing you learn in honing a particular skill delivers benefits. And the practice that you do, say in a sport, is similar to the investments that you can make in your marketing to get better and better. So anyway, there's some value. We will get to this in especially in Great Marketing Turnaround session number 3, but there's value in the actual time investment and doing it. It's not just the end product. So the value in going through this shows up in the end product. So yes, examining features, benefits can clarify what you need to communicate in terms of the benefits to the customer. It is also important because you might discover the sorting or the prioritization. One of the mistakes a lot of marketers do is they just dump too much information. And now I'm not talking about your website, that you might be putting a lot of stuff in there for the purposes of search engine optimization and keywords and expressing all that. But even the way that you do that is going to be dictated by this early exercise of what it is that you want to make sure somebody sees, because we know time on page is very fleeting and you want to be able to highlight or have the stuff that's going to make the most impact in that influencing those 6 principles of influence. You want that to be easily visible. So you want to be able to know what it is that's going to stand out or that you want to stand out. And I really can't emphasize enough that this is intended to get you to think like your customer. The more training you do on thinking like your customer and getting outside of your own business, this is what I want my business to be, instead of this is what my customers want from me, that customer-centric approach is going to improve your marketing the most. So go ahead and make note of some of those areas. Were there any other, let me go over the next steps and then we'll take any questions at this point. It'll be a good stopping point. So what you're going to do from here is obviously you're going to get more detailed. And I say that because there's usually a hierarchy that I do when I start to build stories. So that key message that we did could end up with some supporting messages. So those are the evidence, if you will, and those could include some kind of proof points. And so you just it's like having all your ducks in order. You want to make these important messages, but you also want to have a way to support your complaints. So my example is this. Okay, let's say my key message is using Heidi's messaging tips will bring you more customers. That's my sell. That's hopefully a benefit, right? So if I need to support that, let's say I have some data that shows 3 companies that I worked with that increased sales by X% in the last year. So that's some supporting document. But if I want to have some more powerful proof, I might do an interview with one of my clients in a video. And that's how the stories develop, from a message to the support that's evidence-based, and then translate it into something that gives proof and creates that story. So what you're going to do is repeat this with any additional market segments that you might not have discovered. Or let's just say you did it very broadly for this practice, but you need to go back to session 1 and do the target marketing and do the segmenting to get your different audiences, because they have different purchase decision behavior. Then you can repeat it with each of those segments. And sometimes that activity, I know it's more work, but that activity yields some really incredible results in terms of refining your marketing and refining your market, so that you see, oh, wow, these certain advantages or benefits appeal more to these certain target markets, and there's a better fit. And remember, the formula is to write the right product or service for the right market and then message it at the right time. So it starts with having that fit. I always recommend, if these are difficult processes, you can work them through with your counselor. And then we're going to move on to getting these tactics and those tactics with the key messages. So that's the refinement of the plan. And that's also part of what we're going to keep working on in the rest of the session, and actually next session as well. Now, let's go back. Questions. Anybody have any questions, guys? I can't see them.
There are no questions, but Garth did send a message.
Oh, got it. I can see it. Yes. Hopefully I am making it understandable, and hopefully that's why there aren't any questions. As you put the questions in there, we kind of hold them for these little intermissions. So don't, if it's urgent, you know, Esme will speak up, but if it's not, we'll just hold them till these break points. And hopefully we're covering everything, but we'll have another opportunity to ask more questions as we go. So let's do it. All right. So before you begin any marketing activities, you need to ask this question. What do you want to happen? It's so important that we're going to spend some minutes on it. Every communication should have a specific objective tied to those overall marketing goals. So there was a reason I asked you that in the beginning. So you got to be clear about the very next step, or else your customer's not going to be clear either. So those things I put down in terms of identifying the buyer's process, the better you get at doing that, is going to help you drive the journey, because the buyer's on a journey, and depending on your industry, it could be a really short journey. It could be, you know, seconds of decision making and an impulse buy. But in some industries, it could be a really a longer journey. If it has to do with any kind of educational process about your product or your service, then it could be a longer journey. And so getting the right message, again, at the right time, is by offering a series of actions that are going to resonate with their journey to guide them on that step. Smaller steps don't require much in terms of incentive, but the larger the step, the greater need to have that really powerful message that you're going to use to create interest and desire. So we're talking about our goals and the process that we outlined in terms of the next step. So what I want you to do is, I'm going to have you go ahead and start with the goal, the bigger goal. Some of you put some goals in the chat early on, and we're going to talk about, you can keep that one, or you can upgrade it one, or you can change it. But we're going to come up with a bigger goal. And I've got, so on the left side is a series of things that are related to the customers, attracting new customers, maybe converting a prospect to a sale could be a goal. Retaining customers is a goal, or getting that repeat customer. Maybe increasing the amount of purchase could be a goal. Maybe there's something related to the competition that you need to address. Maybe they're poaching off of your customers, and you want to do something related to some brand or moving them back. What the column 2 side shows you are goals related to maybe some of your bigger company goals, your financial goals. It could perhaps serve you to try and move a particular product over others. Maybe you have one product that's high margin and you want to really focus on that, or fulfill a specific niche with a particular service. Another goal that could have to do with a lot of products has to do with trial. So offering samples, and samples work with services just as much as they do with products, a free consultation. And then maybe another goal has to do with timing, and it has to do with something that's happening in the market and an opportunity. So there's and this is just a sampling, this is not all inclusive. There's a lot of these. If you need to get, store traffic, like you just opened your doors again in your brick and mortar and you need to start to bring people in, then maybe you need some kind of a loss leader so that you can move, people into the store. So really these ideas are going to kind of get you moving into setting up a specific objective. I'm going to be talking about sales promotion because it's one of the most used and abused elements of the marketing mix, but it is actually something that's really important in terms of moving people quickly and what we need to think about first. So what I want you to do is choose a goal. So some of you already put one in the chat at the beginning, and maybe that's the goal. So what I want you to do is, after you look at this bigger goal, okay, then go back to the target segment that you worked in the activity and translate that goal, if you can, to something you want to have happen in a particular communication. So some step on the journey, some objective to move towards that goal. So I'm just trying to get it tinier. Looking at all those steps, maybe in the bottom of the activity sheet that we did where the buying process is, what is the next step that you want a customer to take as a result of your next communication? So I want you to write it down, or if you want to, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. What is the next specific thing? I'll give you some examples. I want the recipient of my marketing communication to give me their email. Maybe that's the next step. Or I want them to click through to my website. Maybe that's the next action. If you are using tactics like social media, I want them to share this with a friend. If you are using some sales promotion, which we're going to talk about next, I want my coupon redeemed. I want my offer redeemed. Or I want, if you do online sales, I want the customer to add on another item to the order in their cart. So I want you to come up with something to start with. It doesn't even have to be the end all be all. Remember, this is practice, because we're going to work with these objectives, but just give you another 30 seconds or so to come up with what's one narrow next step, So if you're looking at SEO, I see an example in there. So one of the things that you might want to hone instead of this broader goal about search engine optimization, maybe you want to figure out what your top keywords are. Or maybe you want, what you want the action to be is you want your customer to see you in the top 5 results and click through to your website. That's kind of a combination one. All right, so we're going to move on here. Again, I got to move a little bit quick here, but we're going to work with these objectives, and so you'll have a chance to really hone them a little bit as we go. But first, I want to talk about sales promotion. I want to define it because it's going to probably be, it might be, depending on your goal or your objective, it might be part of influencing your objective. It could be, it may or may not be part of your next message, depending on your goals, but it can be very effective to incentivize, and that's one of the things that we've been trying to do. So what sales promotion is it's one of the elements of what we call the marketing mix. And even if you don't usually use it, it could be valuable right now or in this period of transition as we're moving out of COVID and there's a lot of different things in flux. This is one of the things that I can say might be in your toolkit to create desire and action during these sort of COVID interesting times. So the defining characteristics of a sales promotion is that it's short term. So it's definitely limited. And it's designed to stimulate an action. So that's why I say if you can narrow your objective into something that you want the audience to do, using sales promotion could be the lever. So it could help you with a goal to create a trial or make a purchase. So when you try and stimulate demand in the short term, you're making it look like a really great deal, or you're going back to those benefits and highlighting some of that as part of it. A lot of sales promotion is intended to stabilize things, fulfill short-term goals, maybe targeting a specific product. It also, even though it's not designed for branding, it's good to spread information about the brand and get new customers or a new market, as somebody mentioned earlier, because a side benefit of sales promotion is that brand awareness happens as people are looking at what your sales offer is. So it still has a benefit for branding. So if many of you are, I saw a lot of the goals early on about attracting new customers and building a new market. Sales promotion is something that could help you, because those goals require overcoming some barrier of change. Maybe they're switching from one provider to another, or maybe your product is a new product for them to purchase. So sales promotion is a really good way to design your communications that will help you with that kind of offer. But remember, if you're sending the wrong message to the wrong audience, it won't matter how good your sales promotion or your offer is. Some people really get hung up and say, well, I have a really great offer, but if they didn't do those other steps to that right audience, right message, then it's not going to matter. So right now, think about your target market that you used up above in the exercise, in the FabX activity, and then think about that activity or the objective that I asked you to write down, whatever that objective was, specific to what you want to happen at this juncture in your next communication. And I want you to think about a sales promotion that would match that goal. So Esme is going to put up a list of sales promotions, and as you're thinking about it, I'll kind of explain what they are. So we're going to leave this one up, Esme, for a little bit. So I want to kind of, it's not an exhaustive list, so you might not find one, but I want to go ahead and just walk through some of these particular items. Discount coupons. So that's anything that you have as an offer to give a price incentive, or two for add-ons, something that you give as a bonus. Maybe especially if you're trying to create branding and awareness, contests or prizes help. Deals, more deals. Maybe it's about your payment terms. Maybe price barriers are one of your things. See if there's anything, and if you have another one, go ahead and add it to chat. Oh, good, I already see Brent. Group funded advertising. Okay, so group funded advertising is a sales promotion. I wish I could unmute you, Brent. I don't have that ability. So I'd like to tell me more about what group funded advertising is, because we're going to talk later about co-op advertising, but I'm thinking about a sales promotion that creates an action from your customers. So I want to see what it is you want your customer to do. What is the offer? So maybe in the group funded advertising, what is it you're trying to get them to do?
So Heidi, we did have a question. For the next steps, can we have options for the customer? Example, look at the sneak peek or pre-order this product.
Yeah, so that could be other is, so for a pre-order, is that what I think? I'm not understanding. Read it again.
For the next steps, can we have options for the customer? Example, look at the sneak peek or pre-order this product.
Yes. The answer is those are great examples. I can see a couple of other sales promotions. Schedule a strategy session, sneak peek. Yes, Vivian, that's perfect. Advertise for free. Okay, so Brent, that gives me an idea of what your product is, and so, or your service is. So that free, that's really the benefit. So maybe it's a trial. You're getting so much free before you charge for it. It's a limited trade discounts. You guys are getting the idea. So Esme, go ahead and let's share the results and see a little bit about what you guys are saying. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. So good. I like that everybody's really customizing them. I can see them coming through in the chat, and the majority of you are really making sense, or having this idea make sense to your specific industry, which I really like. So you're thinking about the fact that there are incentives out there. And that's really all I wanted to do, was to go ahead and have you guys think about what it is that you could do to create some kind of incentive as you are crafting your marketing message. So now we can kind of look at the structure of building that message, because you have something to start with. You have the next step or the action that you want them to take, and you probably have a lever. If you found some kind of sales promotion, you have a lever to get them to do it. So let's talk about the actual process. And some of you may have heard this. Sorry if it's redundant, but it's a staple. It's about as old school as you can get, and as easily translatable to modern technology as it was to old school stuff. So the AIDA model is something that a lot of people might already have heard of, but some people never have. It's a structure. It's a structure that helps you build a specific message. So I'm going to go through it, and then we'll go through it together. So it's going to describe sort of the stages that a buyer goes through when they are deciding to make a purchase, or even when they're examining one communication. So it could happen for one specific marketing communication, as well as a series of communications or a campaign. And the formula is this: attention, interest, desire, and action. So as you build your actual stories and your communication techniques, you are going, whether it's online, offline, it doesn't matter, you're going to take them through this process of getting their attention and building some interest. And then over time, that desire happens, and then you really need to close. And the action might not be the actual purchase. Remember, it's the next logical step on the purchase journey. It's giving you their email, or accepting your sneak peek, your freebie. That is whatever that next action is on that journey, the one you want them to take now, literally as a result of the communication that's in front of you. But it's dictated by those overall marketing goals of getting new customers and by that purchase process. And so you have to go through that to figure out, for this particular communication, what that action is. And so your marketing plan is putting together the series of these, as you can see. So before you write any of your content, instead of somebody just jumping in there and they're starting to write an ad, well, what do I want to say in an ad? This is just giving you a little bit of a structure, knowing what you want them to do. Hey, I want them to share their social media posts. Hey, I want them to click on this link, or you want them to find your website. These are all starting with the end in mind for every tactical application that you do. So I like to work backwards, and we're going to use the message worksheet we created to kind of fulfill this whole thing. So we're going to flip the template around in that activity sheet. We're going to go to the next page of it. When we start this activity, you can take your bigger goal that you had talked about at the beginning, and then you can put your objective that you shared with me or you wrote down. And that's just centering yourself around those objectives so that you know what it is you're trying to get them to do for this communication. What's that next step? If you know what your communication method is, you can fill that in. Sometimes when you're just doing this process, you might have multiple communication methods and you may not need to fill that in. But let's say you know it's going to be an e-blast, or you know it's going to be a social media post, or a blog, or an ad. You've put that in because that may help you with having the right message for the right medium, which is a big topic for next session. So we're going to do this little trick of developing goal-based content, and we're going to flip, starting with the call to action. So I'm going to walk you through it on the slide rather than on the handout, but you'll see in the handout that it's flipped in reverse. So we're going to start with action. So remember, AIDA was the way that the customer sees it is from this bottom slide. They're going to go from attention, interest, desire, action. But the way you're going to build your content is in reverse, with starting what you want them to do, what action you want them to take, and how you're going to make that easy. So some pointers: remember our key principles. You are trying to use those influential principles that we talked about in the beginning to ask for small initial commitments that can be made very easy. And you've identified them. You want them to get something for free. That's pretty easy. You want them to schedule something. That's a next step. You want them to give you their email. These are easier, broken down steps. If you are tying it to that sales promotion that you identified earlier, make sure your call to action is really clear on what they need to do to receive the offer. So the first thing is, what do you want them to do? What's the easiest way they can do it? That's the first step, okay? Now, the next step, if you're in doing the activity sheet is, let's say, let me jump back here. Let's say what your call to action is. Let's say my next call to action is, I want them to watch a video. This is my demonstration of my super cleaning technique for my cleaning company is in a video. Now, this is what we call a soft call to action. It's not very invasive. It's not very hard. It's just a small time commitment. A less committal call to action is a soft call, and it's when you have those longer, difficult journeys, you break it up. It could be something like opening a chat window, sharing the post, or requesting somebody set a demo or something of that nature. Depending on where your message is being delivered and the space you have, you might have both a soft and a hard call to action. A hard call to action is something that is much more committal, maybe to schedule something, or to give information so that you can send them a quote. So give some detail. That's a little bit harder. So I want you to go ahead and just do this part just right now, just the call to action, and think about not only what it is that you want them to do and your sales promo show, but if you did fill in the communication method, you might be thinking also about where that message is being delivered. So I'll give you a really basic example. The call to action on a billboard on the freeway could be turn here or exit 349. So I'm going to give you a second to do this.
Heidi, so someone in the Q&A said, our overall objective is recognition at the point of purchase. We sell to the Fed government, and this type of incentive doesn't really work. We already provide a standard prompt payment discount, and most don't take it.
So I'm not sure, because I probably need a lot more information. I think this is Brent, about what might be the right incentives for what you're doing. And if you're selling to the government, you probably have some restrictions on even what you can and can't do in that area. So maybe think smaller in terms of those next steps, in terms of, you know, if there's an education process to what you're selling, is there some kind of incentive you can get them to do to give you a call and talk to you, or meet with you, or think about those next steps and how to incentivize those next steps. Incentives don't always have to be price related. You know, there's from the consumer standpoint, a lot of times they're not. I don't know what you said something early on when you were reading that, Esme, that I probably didn't catch, about recognition.
Do you want me to read it again for you?
Just the recognition part.
Okay, so our overall objective is recognition at the point of purchase.
So I think, Brent, I need more information on what you mean by that.
This
Before I
was
can answer that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Then I need more information about that. And we may cover that anyway, so hold on to that. And if we need to, we'll catch it again. And if you can kind of clarify a little bit more what you need by recognition, we'll probably touch back on that when we get to the questions. So we've got a call to action here, right? So that was the first step. Then the next two steps are kind of like using all of that benefit analysis that we did to create the desire and the interest. This is building what I call building the story. And in this area, you want to kind of make like a short little outline for your content. So under Story Builder, you're going to arrange that messaging, that key message you did, in a way that makes sense just for this communication. So it could be just one of the points that you did in your key messaging. Or it could be sort of, if it's an overall brochure or something of that nature, it could be trying to hit a little bit on each thing. So it's really dependent on what this communication is. And we're going to go into media in our Great Marketing Turnaround session 3, because we can't cover it all in 2 hours. But you know, for instance, that for a tweet or a sign, a brick and mortar sign, you have very limited space, or a billboard. So you're going to have a very limited story or desire interest stage. A really big picture is going to be on a billboard or a tweet or any of those things. It's going to be really simple. But if you're doing a website blog or an e-blast, you have much less limits. You still have word limits, but you have a lot more space to go and expand into your desire argument and your interest argument. So I can't get too detailed in the story builder area because it's going to be very, very specific to what it is that you're trying to get them to do, but also to what communication vehicles you're going to do. So let me go back a little bit and give you another tip. If you have made your call to action an active verb, you're going to get more click-through. So this is just a short tip. So get free gift or free trial and all of that. You're going to want that interest, that desire and interest to build up to them wanting that free gift. So you're going to have to start to sell that sales promotion as part of your desire and your interest. That's where you're creating you're building up that influence to get them to do that next step, to put the desire and the interest. Using those persuasive principles, using your understanding of your target market and what their key motivators are in that benefit. This is where somebody asked me about their persona, but this is where working with a persona is really important. So a persona is a representation of your target market, and it's a great way to use your persona because you can start to actually make your persona the hero of your story. And you could even use real customers for this, but if you use a real customer, you really need to protect them. So this is something where you might get permissions or that kind of thing, or make it completely impossible to tell who they are. But that's the messaging part of it. So, so let's say I'm going to use actual real example here for my story builder example, because I've done this before. So I owned a printing shop, and my key message was about having all of the services under one roof and a real person to talk to in order to get the designs right and get the creative concepts delivered and all of that. It wasn't some online, print ordering where, you got all confused in the process. So my sales promotion was a free design consultation for new customers. And so that was part of how I did my call to action, is to order that free design. So when I'm building my story though, in order to get that desire action, I did an interview with my favorite customer. Let's say she was Michelle. So I say you can use persona, you can use a real customer. So she told the story of her jam she was in after her online order fell through and it didn't meet her needs. And she gave me a testimonial, and we made a video that was about how to design a brochure start to finish that give people the education. And then I was able to build that story through here. So you can use these fictional personas. You don't have to create a story, but sometimes it's one of the actual ways to walk somebody through what that next step is by saying, here's what somebody else did. Now here's how you can do it. So I'm going to give you another minute or so. I wish we could give more time, but I just want you to see if you can get anything down, some notes, even just under story, like just my notes about, hey, I'm going to interview Michelle, or I'm going to create this kind of blog story, or what you would do. You don't have to have the full copy because you don't have time for that, but you just want to have the basics of what you want to put down that would create that interest and bubble up to desire. Remember, if you know what you're writing for right now, like which media, you can make that a little bit easier. So we're going to go right into creating that story just to get that story builder stuff down. What are you going to do?
So Heidi, there was a question by Stacy. My call to action would be schedule a strategy session, and my communication method would be after they read a newsletter or email.
Can you hold on to that and we'll get it in the Q&A, because I want to give people, give them a chance to think about it.
All right.
Don't let me forget though.
Don't worry, I won't.
So I'm thinking we're going to go ahead and kind of keep moving along here because I just want to make sure we cover this last part with the interest of time. So the last part is the creative concept part. And I mentioned this part because this is how we get back to the last part of the slide. That's the attention. What's going to fascinate them? What's going to attract them in the first place? Could be an image. What's newsworthy? What's special sauce? What's going to get them to pay attention? And this is super important because if they don't get past this part, if you don't get their attention, you aren't, because we're doing this in reverse, you aren't going to get their interest, their desire, or their action. So this is where creative talent comes in, and I do cover that a little bit more next session. But you can use outside help for that. If you do, I like to give them all of this mapping that you've done, because one of the dangers about outsourcing some of our stuff is they don't know this process. They've avoided this process. They don't have this process. You do. You know your customers. And so you can translate them, or you can give them this information. They can help you with the creative stuff. So the attention grabbing, finding just the right photo, if you will, or coming up with a headline or whatever it is. But let's just cover it for yourself, because you might want to come up with an idea. It's what you think. It's just a note here. What you think would grab attention. So you might put something here like a really great picture of my hamburger, or I might put something about a headline that had my kill rate for my germs, like 99% kill rate for, cleaning hospital rooms or something. You might want to make, if you're doing an online method, you might want to make this search relevant, meaning keywords, use internet vernacular or something that's going to be search relevant, because that could be how you're grabbing attention, is by honing in on the successful keywords. Another technique is a thought-provoking question. So it could be, if you look at what your unique selling proposition is and turn that into a question, have you always had to buy 2 types of cookies at your events? Or that's probably lame, but you get the idea. So I'm going to give you another minute, because we don't have a lot of time here, to just think about just a couple ideas to grab attention. Okay, hopefully you had your creative thinking cap on and you were at least able to come up with something to remind you later about the facet of creating attention. Unfortunately, due to our time limitations, we need the rest of this for you to work on after the session, or with your counselor, or with your team at your business. We've really covered a lot in this short time period, so I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of this and debrief. So we talked about our goals and how we translate that into a communication objective. We talked about matching sales promotions of some type, and some of us are struggling as to figure out what that sales promotion or that offer is. I'm not necessarily saying that you have to have a sales promotion, a short-term incentive. Remember that if it's something you offer all the time, it's not a sales promotion, because it doesn't have that time element. So a sales promotion is what you're doing above and beyond to get something to happen quickly and tied specifically to that action that you want them to take. But not all communications have a sales promotion, but they all do have a next step call to action. So each communication follows the AIDA principle and we can use our FAB analysis and the key message and USP to build that. You can make it into the hero story. That just means that you're solving the problem and you're giving an example. That's what the hero story is. Example of somebody who's succeeded by using your product or service, have solved their problem. And then that whole awareness of the buyer's process and how that is definitely going to give you more opportunity to break up your messaging into the little chunks to take them along the journey if it's a more complicated process, a purchase. So let's take some time for questions. I think Esme, you had another question earlier that I wanted to get back to, but I wanted to get the detail on that.
Okay, so we have 3 questions, and the first one was from Stacy. She just needed a clarification. So my call to action would be schedule a strategy, and my communication method could be after they read a newsletter or email. That was a question, sort of clarification.
Okay, so the call to action is to, I think she means schedule a strategy session. If so, like if it's a free strategy session. So first of all, somebody has to understand what your offer is. So I don't understand that, but maybe your market would, and maybe they know what that is. But go back to what that benefit is and see if you can give them a little teeny piece of the benefit to give away in that sales promotion. So that was the call to action. What did you say the communication? Read the second part.
The communication method could be ... after they read a newsletter or email.
Okay, so if the communication method is an e-blast, that's fine. And then you would build the story in the e-blast. So whatever that thing is that you're offering that I don't really understand, that strategy thing, you need to be able to create the interest and the desire in that e-blast that would lead to that call to action. So you need to be able to make sure not only do they understand what it is, but do they want that? And how can you make sure their interest is high? Go back to those principles. One of the reasons sales promotion works, guys, is that 6th principle of scarcity. Sales promotion has a time element. It has an expiration date, and that creates scarcity. So using those principles in creating your call to action, or if you can't tie a sales promotion directly or call it that, maybe you can go back to those principles and weave something else in there, you know, whether it's one of those other areas. Hopefully that answered it. What else was there?
Okay, so we had 2 from Vivian. The first one was in the story builder part. Are there any things we should generally avoid using or doing?
So I've covered some of the things that you should generally avoid, but I don't think I have like an actual cheat sheet list, because I think it may or may not depend. You will naturally avoid doing the wrong things if you're doing some of these right things. So I think earlier on I mentioned the fact that you don't want to make this about you or your company. So when you're delivering your content, if you're using statements about the customer, using the actual words you or your instead of our company does this, it talks about the benefit you will receive this. So those are some of the things that you will do to avoid the don'ts, is to just keep in mind some of these do's. If you're doing a lot of the do's, you will probably avoid some of the traps.
And then the next question is, should all sales promotions have a time limit?
Yes. That's the definition of a sales promotion. If it's just a normal aspect, then it's one of your features, advantages, benefits that you're going to play up, that you're going to use. But a sales promotion is one-upping it. It's time sensitive because it's something really desirable. So that's a good question, because we need to hammer that home. It doesn't create scarcity if it doesn't have that. So I think we covered that. Good. Okay. Well, I'm going to go on because we got still a little bit more. I really want you to think about how this process differs from your usual process. You know, it's a little bit time consuming. I think somebody mentioned that it's a little bit of work. Yeah, it is, because when you do the process, your marketing is going to get better and better and better. So the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. All right. So that's what we're leading into, really, actually, synergy. So as you do the process and you rinse and repeat with various different parts of your marketing, you're going to find the results are going to grow exponentially. That happens, and we'll get into a lot of science in next session, because any given customer requires multiple impressions, usually multiple viewings, multiple understanding, seeings of your name, logo, and benefits before they make a decision to contact you or to take that next step. So print, e-blast, social media, website, they multiply upon each other, and each single impression kind of stacks up. So not linking your messages together, having everything just sort of unrelated, is dilution. You really need to talk about your whole plan, even though right now, up until now, we've really been talking about a single communication, a single message, but these messages are going to be repeated in different venues, and or they're going to be stacked together. Combining all these tactics and playing with the timing and all of that is how you get to be a pro, and you start to test them and measure them to see what results or better results that can be gained. So it's linking it all together, and next session we'll talk about that when we talk about choosing specific media vehicles and we talk about evaluating things for effectiveness. But I want to leave you with some ideas that are going to help you organize already your messages across these different platforms. It's just one more item in that idea of right message, right time, right audience. It's really coordinating everything. So we're going to talk a little bit and give you a little bit of information on synergy and syncing everything through what I call a content calendar. And you probably already have this or heard of it before. So I'll just talk about it briefly for those of you guys who are not familiar with the term. It's sometimes called a communications map in the old days. I won't get hung, or a content plan. I wouldn't get hung up on the name, but it's about managing. It would develop mostly for online management of social channels. But I've seen businesses, and when I use it, I combine offline and online messaging into one place because it just makes sense to see it all in one place. The purpose is so that you can build a workspace so you can see the synergy develop, to build the synergy together. So it's like a mini marketing plan, maybe. It serves multiple purposes, just like a marketing plan. It keeps everybody informed. So you share this with anybody who's involved in your marketing. Because whenever there's one marketing chef in the kitchen, boy, you can have a lot of mess ups if you don't communicate this. So it serves sort of as accountability to make sure you're getting all of the communications out with the synchronicity that you intended. So it organizes your target market segments if you have them. It also does this by method, so the different marketing channels you're going to use. It should have some degree of timing because that's where the synergy comes through. And it might have some other elements of coordination, like if you're working with some kind of marketing partners. And there are many, many ways to build a calendar, but I prefer spreadsheets because they put everything on a page, they're sortable, they just have a lot of value. But the information in a spreadsheet should have some backup detail, just like the messaging sheet that we worked on today. So each of these components in a calendar might have detail back onto the message. So I'm going to show you an example of a content calendar. Actually, let me see if I can get my live example. I think this is bigger. Well, not much bigger. Maybe it leaves you a little bit more to be seen. So at the top, you have time frames, and I like to go down to the granular of each week. You could just have months, you could have quarters, but I like to get down to the granular level. And on the left side, you're going to have, I sorted this one by messages. It could vary. Maybe you sort it by your product lines. Maybe you even sort it by your target markets if you have a lot of target market segments with very different benefits like we talked about. But for me, after I've done a messaging sheet for each of those things, so I've done some messaging on different products, I've done some messaging work on my sales promotion, I've done some messaging work on my brands, and now I want to get these messages out across different media. And this is the planning sheet to do it. So on the bottom, I have different methods that I'm going to use, color-coded, as you can see. So you can make those whatever you want. And then I start to put it together. What is going to be my frequency? So for sales promotion, I know that I'm going to want to do an email at least every other week. So week 1, week 3, I'm going to do an e-blast for my different sales promotions. Videos take me longer to produce, but I still want to have them, so I'm going to sparse them in here as well. You can plot out anything that you want to do. Maybe I know that I really want to have social media every single week, but I want to make sure I'm cutting across all my messages. So I might have a message on week 1, my social media is about sales promo. Week 2, it's a different kind of sales promo. I also week 2 did some, I did a blog. So when I did that blog on my news, on my website, I then did a social media post about it. So that's on there. I've got more social media about brands, just some brand social media. I've got social media brand about every month throughout here. I've got sales promo, social media. So all these little teal squares tell me where I'm covering. Am I getting a message out every week? And I can go and check and see what my message would be on social media every single week by this calendar. Let's say you're going to do, I'm a big proponent of doing cross promotion or having marketing partners, particularly on social media. If you're not interacting with other businesses with like segments in your target market, then you're probably not doing all that you can on social media. But let's just say I have a partner and we're going to do, in the month of April, we're going to do a big promotion, and that promotion is going to have an email and then social media posts. I'm going to do a digital ad, and I'm going to do more social media posts, and then I have another list, and this is going to tell me what that schedule and that synergy is. So it's a simple full year calendar if you built out every quarter, and maybe you only work on it a quarter at a time. But it's a lot better than, what am I going to do next week? What am I going to, if most people are planning their marketing week to week without the benefit of synergy and without the thought that goes behind their target market messages. You don't have to use this format, but you really should be mapping out your coordinated messages in some organized way to see if there are some gaps in the communication and if your messages need more reinforcing. Actually, at the end of this, if you fill out the survey and put your email in it, then I can send you a copy of this template in case you like this template, because we can spend a lot more time on it. So as I wind down, I want you to think about how you're going to invest in your marketing by spending a little bit more time in it. Your first job, I said, was to finish that FAB and the key message planning for each target market segments, and really ultimately, you're going to do that if you have to tweak it for a different communication message. More than ever, businesses really have to work. You're competing with a lot of noise, a lot of clutter, especially if you're an online business and your stale old messages are not going to be as effective. So doing that FAB process and breaking it down by the target market is going to be really important. So from your marketing goals, plan your communications around your objectives. So start with the objective. Definitely build some inventory of your stories. That's each of those messaging sheets. You could become, each one could have its own story, looking for ways to make the customer the hero, using consistency. Remember, consistency is a principle of influence. So keeping your messaging really constant. And then as you get really good at building those messages, start to plot them along that calendar. Start maybe with the 12 weeks and put out your messages. Figuring out what's going to be your pop-up on your website, so you don't have the same pop-up 2 months later that you had, before, so that you have something different for that repeat customer to come back if that's your incentive. Other things, of course, that you can do is work with that SBDC counselor, because maybe this stuff is a lot. Maybe they can help you figure out the sales promo. Maybe they can help you come up with some of those stories. Take a look also at what, those of you who've been in business for a while, this is just time to kind of freshen things up and look at your recent efforts. If you haven't been measuring them, and that's the topic of our next session, start to look at how you're measuring them, because you're going to be implementing some of these changes and you want to see the effect. It's like getting on the scale when you're in a diet. You're going to get more motivated by seeing some of the success. And then I go ahead and attend that next session, which is, this is the wrong date. I'm sorry. The right date, Esme, is the 2 weeks from now, May 27th. Okay. So prepare yourself for that one. That was the benefit of using the other slides, now that I realize this too late, because we're going to talk a little bit more about all of this. And Oh, I did have it in there, but I just had it on a duplicate slide. May 27th. Get it on your calendar. Did you have the link in there? Great. Esme, you're right on it. She's got the link for signing up for the next one. So we've got just a few more minutes here for questions. I really want to thank you all for joining us, but I'd like to take any end all be all questions.
Heidi, so it seems that people really like the calendar. Maybe we could attach that to the email that I'll be sending.
Yes, so if you'd like a copy of the content calendar, then I need you to give your email. So I want you at the end of this session, there's going to be a survey. And in the survey, if you put your email, then I will, it's kind of like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I really appreciate the feedback on improving our programs. So if you could complete that evaluation, and then I will make sure that Esme and I get you that template.
And then we had one question from Stacy. Is this better? Schedule a free strategy session to help you gain clarity and identify your goals in academics, career, business, or life. I believe it was referring to the previous question she had asked. For the
yeah. So it's harder for me actually, because I'm like such a verbal learner, but I think you're getting it. I think you're getting closer and closer and honing in on it. So at least I understand what the session is about. So definitely keep going back to that benefit analysis, the FAB analysis, because that clarifying it is an advantage of having the session, but what's the benefit? What's it going to do for them? So good job. You're working through it. All right. If there's no other questions, anything else, Esme?
No, we don't have any more questions.
Okay. So as a reminder, complete that eval, and then the way I wanted to talk about counseling. I know some of you already have a counselor, but if you don't have a counselor, I wanted to talk about how it works. People might not get this, but what happens is when you sign up and you fill out the form that is online, you will get assigned a lead counselor and have an initial counseling session. And during that session is when you identify what you want to work on. So if you want to work on marketing, if you want to work on your marketing messaging, you need to put that in the form when you sign up for counseling, and then you need to talk about that in that initial counseling session. And you can see that the objectives we talked about for messaging were linked to your goals for your marketing, which are linked to your goals for your overall business. So having a counselor kind of work with you through that whole process can be really important. And so the first session is identifying the priorities, and then you would have follow-on sessions to work on any of those things. So it could be an engagement that is kind of continuous along as you come up with new objectives to work on. You might have more different follow-up sessions. And then we always track what we're doing. And one of the reasons to do that is that sort of our financing comes from the government, and they want to know we're having successes. So we kind of go through those successes with you, and we celebrate and share in your successes so that we can continue to do what we like to do. There's more resources on our website, so take a look there. The training event calendar, which features more training. I'm just going to highlight a few sessions coming up. Again, there's the one that we're going to have, session 3. There's also a Grow with Google series. This is a really great series that's starting in co-oping with Google to talk to you about the different applications and channels within the Google environment. And the first one is on YouTube. So I would really put that one on your calendar. Then if you're into seed funding, so if you want to have a grant related to some of your technology, this is a great one for you. And then if you're interested in learning more about taxation for businesses, the IRS is, we're co-partnering with the IRS on a, I think it's an open, like a Q&A, like it's feedback. It's not just a webinar. So I think you have input on business income and how it's taxed. So a lot of really great stuff coming up. That kind of concludes it, guys. Like I said, after you're off this, you will receive, I think it's a link to SurveyMonkey. Correct me if I'm wrong, Esme. Please go ahead and do that and fill that out for us, and to get that content plan. And I'll send you some other good stuff too as a response. Thank you guys for joining today. I hope you got something out of it.
Thank you, everyone.